Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is Kushalmehra. So, as per the current news, we hear that the One Nation, One Election bill is scheduled to be presented tomorrow in the parliament as per the media reportage. BJP has already issued a 3-9 whip as per media reportage to the entire members of parliament, and they expect everybody to be present over there. And this report has been available in the public domain for a while. In fact, Tushar had sent it to me a long time ago. It's a 300-page report for those who don't know. It's like 322 pages of a PDF file. It's there. By the way, the public link of the report is there in the description of the podcast. For anyone who wants to read it, just click the link and आप लोग भी उसको download करके पढ़ सकते हो. So Tushar and I, it's actually my fault. We are scheduled to do it much before, but I was just not able to finish reading the report. Now I've read the report, so I was like, okay, Tushar, aa jao. So Tushar, welcome. Let's get started.
Hey, good evening. Uh, Great bill if it is presented in the way it has been proposed. One thing that really interests me about this entire idea, and we must tell our viewers also at this moment, at this stage, it's an idea. So we should look at the academic side of it also before we look at the political side. Now, one thing is quite clear: where we are as a country today, as a republic, we are set to become the third largest economy. We have a demographic dividend on our side. There are a lot of things that are working in our favor. There are a lot of things globally that we can use to our advantage. So, the way the entire global equation is structured, India stands to benefit in most cases. But there is a fundamental problem. In India, polity governs our entire political existence, not policy. Our mainstream conversation is on politics always. So, politics supersedes policy in India. And that is where we have a big, big problem to solve. When politics supersedes policy, your economics goes for a toss often, your policy making goes for a toss. Plus, you add in the diversity agenda. When I say diversity, I mean the kind of communities that need to be taken along in any policy. It's a very difficult thing to do, right? The problem is why India is how India is today is politics supersedes policy. And that is the first thing we need to fix. Because 2035, you are hopefully a $10 trillion economy. The demographic dividend is purely on your side. China is aging. America has its own share of problems to deal with as a polity. What do you want? Do you want to be in hardcore policy mode? Or do you want to be perpetually in politics mode? Now, again, this is a very academic explanation to it. I'm not trying to attribute anything here politically to any party, but we need to start with the basic fact, which is not even it's a fact. You look at your news channel, it's 8 o'clock right now in India. You open any news channel, the mainstream conversation is about politics. There have been some significant policy leaps in the last 10 years, significant. You talk about GST, you talk about digital public infrastructure, you talk about the entire economic policy management during the pandemic and thereafter. Significant policy leaps. They never get discussed, ever, in the mainstream, be it the media, be it the YouTube space. You are possibly an exception who takes interest in policy, but there are far few of you, far few. And the problem is because politics supersedes policy. And in the last 75 years, that has had an impact on policy, which we can't afford anymore.
So let's assume that this is the case, but I want to break down this discussion into two parts.
Hmm.
First, I want to absolutely steelman the case of the government of India and this report. For once again, those who say, "Kya report hai bhai?" This is, I'll just share my Kindle. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the report. It is the high level committee report on simultaneous elections in India 2024. This is the report that you're seeing. Obviously, I read it on my Kindle. You can read it wherever you want to read it. Now, I want to spend some time steel manning the arguments of the government. I think Tushar should be the one doing it, because, like I even stated yesterday, I have deep problems with this concept at some levels. I'm open to changing my mind, but let's see. So, Tushar, first, I would say now, and don't rush. Take your time. Take as much time as needed, but explain what is the government's point of view. How does the government look at it? Why is the government suggesting it? What are the problems as per the government? Everything.
Now, let's take it one by one, and I'll make sure I do not rush through it. The first rationale from the government is that this will help fix the policy paralysis. Now, the government feels that because of us being perpetually in election mode, somewhere, to some extent, policy making has taken a beating in India. Now, how legitimate is that? You look at the three big protests that have happened in India recently. You're looking at CAA, you're looking at the farmers' protest. There were two farmers' protests, the second one did not take off. But the first one, 2021, and a bit of 2022. What was that? That was a precursor to the big elections of 2022 in Uttarakhand, in Uttar Pradesh, in Punjab, in Goa. There was another state where the elections were due, and that was Manipur, right? Now, every big protest has been a precursor to an election. There is a policy paralysis. You look at CAA 2019, suddenly Delhi is witnessing these massive protests in Shaheen Bagh. Why? Did they have any legitimate argument against CAA? Absolutely not. 5 years later, they still don't have a legitimate argument against CAA. But that was somehow about the Delhi Assembly elections. Farmers' protest. Do the farmers, even today, have a legitimate explanation as to why they were against the laws? Absolutely not. But they're still camping in Punjab. Had Haryana not gone to the BJP, they would have been camping on the outskirts of Delhi. Why? Again, because they felt that we've finished an election, we have the right to march on. So you look at every big protest in the recent times, it's been a precursor to the election. Somehow, state assembly elections have become this tool of extortion for opposition parties or some elements who want to extort the government on the policy front. It is a legitimate problem. We can't run away from it. There is a reservation issue that was there in Maharashtra. Now you look at the protesting side. Let's look at infrastructure. 11.11 lakh crore earmarked for capex in this financial year. Almost half of it has been spent. Now you'll say the first 3 months went into elections, so the expenditure was less. The next 3 months, something else. But the truth of the fact is the state governments are not responding. They are perpetually in election mode. Now, we are in December. What's 16 December today? Last year, October, we were in the election mode for Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Telangana. That was September, October. December, the elections get over. January, February, there are a lot of rumblings within the lines. The Bihar government falls. Then there is the whole Ram Mandir. Then starting February end, we are again in election mode until June, which is the Lok Sabha election. July, August, one would expect a respite. August, we are again in election mode in Haryana. Now, Haryana gets over in October. We are back to election mode where? In Maharashtra, which gets over in November end. Now, you look at the last 15 months, we've just been in election mode. And before October 2023, until May, we were in the Karnataka mode. Before that, go back 6 months, Himachal and Gujarat 2022. Go back 10 months, and it was the entire election of Uttar Pradesh along with Uttarakhand, along with 3 other states in March 2022. So the question is, are we going to be a country which is perpetually in election mode? That's the first rationale of the government policy paralysis. Number two, they say that the government machinery takes a toll. Now, I'll give you an example, and this is something personal. In my hometown, there was something within the extended family that required police assistance, and they were unable to assist because they were on election duty. Now, police in one UT is on election duty in a different state. Nothing wrong with that. The government has to mobilize the resources. But for how long? There are around 70 lakh personnel which were deployed across 12 lakh polling booths in 2019 election. That's the stat from the report. Now, the thing is, when you have elections continuously, as I just gave an example, government schools need to be vacated. People working in the state and the center government, they need to be sort of called upon. So the second reason the government is giving machinery. Now, one counter argument to this can be that we have a surplus of people in this country and land also, so this shouldn't really be a problem. But somewhere within the functioning of the bureaucracy at the lower level, I'm not talking about the IAS and IPS officers, I'm talking about the lower level, the school teachers, the personnel, the police personnel, they have happened to sort of suffer through the delays. Even Amit Shah in an interview, he said that CRPF forces or the other central forces, they can't be engaged in election duty across 5 years, that they're going to one state at one point and then the other state at one point. So that's the second rationale they are giving. The third rationale they give, which is more of an answer, is they say that the regional parties will continue to remain relevant. And there I agree with them. There they are citing the example, the favorite example of Odisha in 2014 and 2019. Two big elections, a massive Modi wave. I don't think anyone can dispute that. Odisha was immune to it, both at the state level and in 2014 and 2019, even at the Lok Sabha level. This happens. There was a Modi wave across the country. Punjab is another example. Modi has won the Lok Sabha election thrice without doing much in Punjab. So when the opposition parties say that, look, the regional parties will lose their relevance, the government is saying, hold on, this is what the results look like. And this has happened in the past. In Tamil Nadu, there were simultaneous elections at one point. The state voted for one thing, in the center, they voted for another. So there is no guarantee that when you time the elections together, the regional parties will lose out while the national parties stand to benefit. This is an explanation they are giving. And Odisha is the closest to reality example we have right now until 2019, because in 2024, BJP has swept the state. But again, BJP, Haryana and Lok Sabha and Haryana Assembly, they were apart by, say, what, 4 months? You look at the difference in results. You look at Maharashtra, the difference in results. It is quite possible that the people in a state are against a party in the Lok Sabha, but somehow something happens and they come back to vote for them 4 months later in the state itself. So that's number three. Number four, they talk about voter fatigue. They feel that the repeated election mode has somehow generated a voter fatigue. Now, I don't know how correct that is, because any given person, assuming they're not faking their voting details, they'll vote only twice within 5 years, once in the center, once in the state. The ones who, people like me who belong to a UT, which without a state assembly, we vote once in 5 years. But they somehow feel that there is some degree of voter fatigue. Now, you saw it in Maharashtra, probably that does not exist, probably it exists in some urban pockets. But I don't see how simultaneous elections have a very direct correlation with voter fatigue. Yes, it might go up by 3 to 4 percentage points. Yes, there'll be far more awareness campaigns. Yes, people who are not able to travel home to vote, a lot of people who live in, say, Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad, Mumbai, or even Delhi, they might be able to do that once in a 5 years exception. That's possible. But even that will give you a percentage point jump of not more than 4 or 5. But even then, if it matters, it's a good cause. Number six, they want governance based issues to center stage, which is what we began with. That policy needs to supersede policy. Right now, Kushal, one of the problems, and this is not from the report, this is my opinion, is that our entire thinking, this is, call it the unfortunate legacy of a 5 year plans, but it's very election to election cycle. You look at the pre 2014 governments, the thinking was restricted to an election cycle. Now with social media, with internet, every election becoming larger than life. I mean, like it or not, the Haryana result day was as big as Maharashtra result day, which was as big as the Lok Sabha result day. even though these three elections are very, very different in magnitude and impact nationally. Delhi, it's a UT at the end of the day, with a state MLA count of 70. That is all. But that election now will become as important as the Maharashtra election, which makes absolutely no sense. Which is why I'm saying policy needs to supersede polity, which is what the government is saying, that governance based issues need to take center stage. And now, when we say governance based issues, one doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, this is a welfare scheme going on, this is an infrastructure pursuit going on, this is a short term project. No. Has any political party in the last 70 years made that sincere effort to tell their voters that this is what we want to do 10 years from now in this state, or 15 years from now in this state, or 20 years from now in this state? It's a question for the viewers. It's something for them to think, that if you think of one party which has a 20, 25, 30-year long-term vision in governance, not in polity, in governance, that this is why we are building this infrastructure, this is why we are curating these reforms, or this is why we are digitizing XYZ. How many parties do you see, especially at the state level? Parties that may not be having a strong presence nationally, but at the state level. Have you ever seen AITC come up with a 20-year vision for West Bengal, or DMK proposing their 30-year vision for Tamil Nadu? I haven't. So that's number 4. Now, then there is the whole economics argument. They feel that the difference in the pre-post GDP difference in elections, it's higher for simultaneous elections. But again, those are just mathematical models. I don't think we should read too much into them. But yes, if you look at Maharashtra as an example, and Maharashtra between 2019 and 2024, you compare how infrastructure projects were stalled when Uddhav Thackeray took over as the chief minister. How he took over is a different subject. He took over as a chief minister. He got the numbers. He staked the numbers to form the government. He delivered on the numbers front, at least. What happened to the infrastructure projects there? Now look at the next 2.5 years. What was going on in Mumbai under Devendra Fadnavis? Now, Maharashtra under 130 for the BJP feels far more stable with 95, which the BJP had last time. That is how politics is. But then we are perpetually in election mode. Now, when you have simultaneous elections, when you have stable majorities, or when you are sure that this is how the election cycle is, there is far more room to flex your muscles on the policy front. There is far more confidence within the investor. So, Kushal, I ran this idea of one nation, one election through some MSME owners in Delhi, because now it's the election cycle, and all of them, of course, have their they all have their own loyalties. They all are sort of supporting some political party. And they said one simple thing. They said, what we figured in the Lok Sabha election was that 3 months create a sort of a pause in the economy. There are people who sort of want to reanalyze the decisions. They want to recalculate their investments, things like that. But now, if you're telling us that there are going to be elections once in 5 years, we'll manage for those 6 months. We'll understand the economy will pause a little. There will be some recalibration. We understand the orders will slow down. The cash flows will slow down. That's fine. But the rest 4.5 years, we are just doing hardcore business. That works for them. Because if you're sitting in Delhi, and I'm just giving one example, it will be pretty much the same for, say, Mumbai MSME owners also, as well. They're looking at every state assembly election, and then they're getting worried, which they even shouldn't, but they are getting worried. Such is the hype within the media. I remember Haryana election result day was on, and I was in one of the studios, and suddenly the results in Haryana, when they were in favor of Congress in the early counting hours, they were somehow a testament to the national politics of the BJP. This is the reality. I'm not saying it's correct, but people confuse every small election for some sort of national political sentiment. And that takes a toll on the investor, that takes a toll on the businesses, that takes a toll on policymaking. We like it or not. It's not correct, but it's happening. So that's another rationale from the government. Then there are another mathematical models which they've proposed, that the fiscal deficit will be more manageable, inflation will be more manageable. I think these things are all very, they are good to assume through models. But the kind of economy we have right now, the kind of global economy we are a part of, we need stability, number one. More importantly, we need that room where the government can flex their muscles to usher whatever reforms they want to usher whatever policies they want to. And I'm talking 10 years from now. Even in the best case scenario, this won't happen before 2029 or 2034. So we are talking about a time when India would be the third largest economy. Our economic needs would be very different. Our infra needs would be very different, and things will have to move a lot faster. So if you look at from a policy prism, this makes sense.
Okay. So now I want to share some thoughts here, and please bear with me. Now, I'm going to steel man again the government. From what I've understood, is the government says because we are consistently in electoral mode, we can never really have policy discussions because we go from one saga to the other. The media keeps discussing one thing or the other. We are never focusing on policy. We are obsessed with Modi ye haar gaye, Modi wo haar gaye, Rahul Gandhi ka ye ho gaya, Rahul Gandhi ka wo ho gaya. My rebuttal to that, number one, is that happens in every country in the world. For example, every nation in the democratic world has provinces or states. State elections happen differently, federal elections happen differently. And वहां तो ऐसा मैंने नहीं देखा है कि करारा तमाचा kind of a thing. I think this is more than the government creation. I think the government has fallen to the media narrative. The Indian media has made elections a tamasha, in my opinion. The Indian media has made elections a dhanda, and it is great business for the Indian media. And they have consistently tried to milk this thing. And in many ways, I feel the Indian government has fallen for that narrative. This is my opinion. People could disagree with me, and they're free to disagree with me. I feel a lot of this policy is driven by that. Now, I heard the Honorable Home Minister, who is someone I actually feel is one of the better performing ministers in India. That's just my personal view. People can disagree with me over there also. And the Honorable Home Minister of India, Mr. Amit Shah, recently in an interview to Rahul Kaval, I would recommend everyone to be watching that entire 54-minute recent interview of Rahul Kamal with Amit Shah ji, where this question was asked. So the Honorable Home Minister of India gave the first answer as that we've had one nation, one election 2 or 3 times before. First time in the 1952 elections, we had, I think, 8 or 9 elections, state elections that happened simultaneously with the central election. That was one. Then again, I think in the 70s, even in this recent election, we had the Odisha state election and the central election together. We had Andhra Pradesh state and central elections together, right? Uh,
Sikkim, yes, yes.
and I think even Sikkim, right?
Sikkim also, Arunachal also, yes.
Or and then Arunachal. So we had 4 state elections, and we had the central election. And in the case of Andhra, the result was one directional. In the case of Odisha, it was one directional. I think in Sikkim and Arunachal, I don't remember exactly. I think it all went against Congress and in favor of either a regional party or the BJP at the state
Yeah,
level, right? I'm not.
correct.
Now, having said that, that is not a guarantee that every time this will be the result. But then,
Absolutely.
see, I think this intervention by a live viewer is very important to raise right here at this moment in the podcast. So the live viewer says, don't you think one nation, one election will reduce local issues which get raised during simultaneous elections? As much as we want national issues talk, we also need local assembly issues that should not be neglected. Now, I will explain this problem with a tangible example. Okay? When you are campaigning, okay? Now, the honorable prime minister, the honorable home minister, and for that matter, even very popular, extremely popular chief ministers like Shri Yogi Adityanath, they campaign all across the country. They do.
Hmm.
Like Yogi ji has been campaigning from north to south to east to west. He's been campaigning everywhere with the honorable prime minister. Like in Maharashtra, also, he was there. And in many ways, the Maharashtra victory is a combination of Mr. Modi and Mr. Yogi, if you ask me. So, now, if we had simultaneous elections, how are the speeches going to be modified? How are they going to talk about issues? See, these are genuine questions that any local voter should be concerned about. See, my issues in Maharashtra. So look at Delhi for an example. In the last two terms, Delhi has consistently voted for Arvind Kejriwal. Now, my dislike to him or somebody else's liking for him does not matter and should not matter. But they consistently vote for Mr. Modi in the Lok Sabha, and they consistently vote against the BJP in the Vidhan Sabha elections. At least the last two terms have shown this trend. Now, how does a campaign happen? Like, we in many ways we are centralizing the campaigning of all political parties, and we are ignoring the local issues. I think that is a very valid question that very astute viewer of our podcast has actually raised. I want to give a shout out to him by name. His name is Dhanush A great intervention by Dhanush. I think this is a valid point. Yaar, mera Maharashtra. I'll give you an example again. मेरा मुंबई का इशू है. आई वाज, यू नो, आई हैड शेयर्ड दिस प्राइवेटली विद यू. आई वाज शिटिंग ब्रिक्स दैट बीजेपी अगर हार गई, मुंबई विल बी डिस्ट्रॉयड because all the infrastructure projects, I think worth billions of dollars, would have been stalled. Whether it's the the coastal road, whether it's the bullet train Ahmedabad to Mumbai ka jo
The
Mumbai
metro.
Maharashtra ko, the metro, everything in and around the Mumbai metropolitan region would have halted. I was shitting bricks for that. Now, if this was a combined election, I don't know how the campaigning would have raised these things. Like when it was a low state election, the MPs and the MLAs and the corporators who were campaigning in Mumbai, their campaigning was very different. They're like, अगर तुमने हमको वोट नहीं किया, ये सब बंद हो जाएगा तुम्हारा infrastructure का काम. How would they have managed this in the sabhas? That is my question.
So look, let's assume that we are in that zone where one election is happening in the 5 years. The first thing is you'll be electing a prime minister and you'll be electing a chief minister, you'll be electing an MP, you'll be electing an MLA. So you'll be voting twice, right? The campaigning will have to evolve. The people will have to vote as they are voting today. Their issues will remain what they are remaining today. Now, you look at Maharashtra, Kushal. 2024 Lok Sabha was a localized problem for the BJP. You know this better than anyone. You know this way better than anyone. That what transpired in Mumbai in a few seats was actually a local problem. It wasn't a national problem. What happened in the Rajasthan Haryana belt, again, was a localized problem. It wasn't a national problem. What went wrong in Uttar Pradesh again was a localized problem. It wasn't a national problem. So remember, a Lok Sabha election can be impacted by localized issues. And similarly, a state election can also be impacted by national issues. These things overlap. There is no saying that there's a clear demarcation that, oh, look, this is a state assembly election. This is how it will vote. It won't vote on these issues. It will vote on these issues. That's a subjective thing. That's a voter thing. There are voters like me who always keep the national picture. But that's me. That's my personal choice. You might be a voter of a state which is still developing, which is not as developed, say, as Gujarat or Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu. You might have other priorities. That makes you right as well. But when you're going to vote, let's say it's 2034, you are a Maharashtra voter, you are in Mumbai. To give one simple example, you have both the national picture also to look at after 5 years, and you also have the state level picture to look at. You also have to look at who's going to be the national party fit to govern the state, but then you're also looking at the state dynamics, which is what Odisha was doing until 2019. It did not do it in 24 because of the CM candidate. Again, that was a local result. Remember, BJP swept Odisha at the state level, not because it was winning nationally, but also because of the localized factor of what was going on with Mr. Patnaik. BJP swept Madhya Pradesh, but they couldn't sweep through Maharashtra, the neighboring state. They couldn't sweep through Uttar Pradesh, again, another neighboring state. They swept through Delhi in the Lok Sabha, but they couldn't sweep through Haryana. They managed half seats in Haryana, but they couldn't manage a single seat in Punjab, while in the neighboring state of Himachal, they got all the 4 seats. While in the neighboring state of Uttarakhand, they got all the 5 seats. So these dynamics, there is a strong overlap between local and national issues. That will always be there. That's a voter choice. That's not something we collectively can control or the parties can control. But yes, what will happen? You'll have the CM candidate campaigning. He'll raise up or she'll raise up a certain set of issues. You'll have the PM candidate campaigning. He will raise a certain set of issues. That demarcation will be there in the campaigning. Will it be in the voters' mind? Absolutely not. Now, the person who asked this, Dhanush might be very clear that, okay, this is my candidate on the national level. This is who I believe. This is my candidate on the state level from a very different party. He's the one I trust to run the state. Dhanush might be clear in his demarcation. That's his choice he's making. It's not a virtue of IQ or how politically suave someone is. It's just how voters are. They are unpredictable, right? And also remember, Kushal, if you have elections once in 5 years, you won't have a 1 month power play. It won't be a T20 sort of a campaign then. It'll be a proper ODI campaign. It will go on for at least 6 months before the elections are. At least 6 months. And I'm being a little conservative here because at the local level, how the ticket distribution has to happen, how the candidates need to be prepared, and let's say we factor in delimitation when there'll be a lot more Lok Sabha MPs and MP aspirants across parties. The campaign will be very different. So the campaign will have to evolve. If you look at it, it's not a voter headache, it's more of a party headache. So even if the BJP is behind this idea, I really hope they also understand that the way they campaign right now and the way they'll have to campaign if this idea is actually executed, it'll have to be poles apart. Because then the people like you and me, who are very clear on state issues, also on central issues, also, who are very clear as to what they want in their state, like other voters, will want to hear certain specific things from their prime minister and then from their chief minister. I don't want my prime minister to then talk about a highway that is being built in the state. That's for my chief minister to do. But then what does my prime minister talk about? That is where the issues will evolve. And that is where governance will take center stage, the long term vision. Because then I want my chief minister to tell me, next 5 years, this is where we'll take the metro in Mumbai. Next 3 years, this is where we'll get Nagpur to. I'm telling Maharashtra because that was the most recent election, just, muscle memory of sorts. Then what do I want my prime minister to say? Next 10 years, this is what we do with the industry. So this is where the campaigning will have to evolve. Can it evolve for all parties? That's for time to tell us. But again, please understand, the voters are not going to be at a disadvantage here. The parties have far more to lose if they do not evolve. But it's a very, very good question from Dhanush.
This is also a very good question.
How
How
about
about
having
having one nation, two elections? 2024, 27, 29 kind of a cycle. Bunch half state elections in one batch, remaining in other batch. Very good question. Like, see, this is more doable if state capacity is an issue, right? And I understand India mein citizen to police ratio is a problem. So, state capacity is an issue and all of these things are issue. Okay, fine. We have what, 29, 30 states, union territories, sab mila lo hamare. So we can have 15. जैसे अमेरिका में होते हैं ना, वो री इलेक्शंस होते हैं हर 2 साल में. So we can have 15 states at one go, then another 15 states after 2.5 years clubbed with the Lok Sabha. Why not that? Isn't that also efficient?
when this was this whole idea of one nation, one election was first proposed in late 23 as a theory. There was no report then, and this was my original thought too. That why not? And we don't know yet, but this might actually happen. We might actually have one nation, two elections. Who knows? But my thought was that let's say you have Telangana, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh in December 23. You push them with Lok Sabha 2024. Then you prepone, then you have 4 states here, then you have 4 states already going with the Lok Sabha, that's 8 states. Then you prepone the elections in Maharashtra, Haryana, Delhi, Jharkhand. That's 12 states. And if possible, you can tweak Bihar and Karnataka also, though a bit of a stretch. But even then, this year itself, you could have had a sample where you could have gone for 12 state assemblies with the Lok Sabha. That was very, very doable. And who knows, that might be the future. The problem is in 2027, again, we end up at the same juncture. Then you're wasting another 6 months before 2027. So you're getting into the campaigning mode from 2026 October until March 2027. So again, effectively, you're getting just 1 year of 4 years of governance, 1 year where you're perpetually in election mode. But again, for starters, this is a far more doable idea. It's a far more doable idea. And that was the original thought even I had, that let's move up some states, push back a few, and it'll be easily done.
In my opinion, I think these are minor things, and I think one nation, two elections is a far more feasible idea and far more doable idea than compared to one nation, one election. I think because when will states be reorganized? तो applies to one nation, one election also ना. कौन सी स्टेट को हम मूव करेंगे, कौन सी स्टेट को नहीं करेंगे? How does that apply to one format and not to the other?
No, but in this case, you already have a set of states which don't need to be moved a lot. Just 6 months here and there. The 12 states I'm speaking about, right? Because these are big states. Again, Telangana, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, anyway, will go to polls in December 28. Delhi, Bihar, you'll have to move up a lot. Delhi, Jharkhand, Maharashtra, and Haryana. They all happened within the 6 months of the Lok Sabha election, right? So this can
Yes,
be
so
far more easily done.
for a few
Hmm.
states, we'll have a longer term or a shorter term.
Ah,
What's the big
so
deal?
that is where Karnataka and Bihar become very doable. So that makes it 14 states.
So that's my whole point, right? See, if because what I see is that again the pressure on the state governments will reduce. Why are state governments not hiring more cops? They should be hiring more
Yeah.
cops. Each and every political party of this country has been pussyfooting around this. They should be hiring more cops. तो हमारे पास cops नहीं है, तो चलो सारे election एक साथ कर लेते हैं. But the point is, the core situation does not get solved. By cops hire karo. So again, the central government is bailing out the state governments for something they are supposed to be doing in the first place. That's my problem, because there will be no accountability. See, the center will always remain accountable. But if we have one nation, one election, the entire state government apparatus of India and the police reforms that some of us who are responsible citizens and who have been whining for a while, which is one of the most important issues of India, ये तो खत्म. ये तो पानी के अंदर चले गए. ये लोग तो बोलेंगे अच्छा है, अभी पुलिस की कोई टेंशन है नहीं. That's my problem. So I honestly feel that one nation, one election. Yeah, I still believe, like, मेरे को समझ में नहीं आ रहा है कि and also this is one more opinion. I just think it shows the insecurity of not BJP I'm talking about. It's just, I think it's showing the insecurity of the central government. In my opinion, I think the central government is reading too much into what the media says. Like, Mumbai municipal elections hote hain. What will Mr. Modi do in BMC? Arey Baba, Mr. Modi and BMC have nothing to do with each other. He's the Prime Minister of India, or BMC is a municipality.
तो यहाँ ना 3 कंपोनेंट है: पार्टी, वोटर एंड मीडिया. पार्टी को पता है उसको क्या करना है. आई मीन कुछ पार्टियों को पता है, कांग्रेस को तो कुछ नहीं पता है. वोटर को पता है उसको कहाँ क्या करना है, मीडिया को नहीं पता. एंड यू वर राइट, for media this is a business. I'll tell you, the first people to lose their sleep on the idea of one nation, one election is the media houses. Because now they are thinking, यार हम तो हर शाम को 4 घंटे 4 लोगों को आपस में लड़ा देते हैं. Me being guilty of being a part of that, right? But what will we do if for 4.5 years we have to discuss hardcore policy? We have to do the boring grind, where we sit down every evening, we break down a policy, we scrutinize the policy, we discuss its implementation, execution, improvement, improvisation. वो सोच रहे यार हम कैसे करेंगे. You look at America and Canada, for instance, the news channels there are very diversified in their programming. Their sports analysis is actually sports analysis. It's not like 5 people sitting there, hey, aise, aise ho gaya. It's very well done, well thought out. You look at their coverage of Hollywood also. It will be woke, it will be a lot of things, but it won't be frivolous. You look at their coverage of economy, even CNN, crazy left, but their coverage of economy is something you can actually watch. just to take an idea as to what's going on. Can you say the same? Our economic news channels are covering politics. आज जीडीपी
एग्जिट
गिरी
पोल्स वालों का धंधा बंद हो जाएगा.
हाँ ऐसे आता है, आज जीडीपी गिरी या बढ़ी 1 परसेंटेज पॉइंट, अगले इलेक्शन में क्या होगा? अरे भाई तुम्हारा काम नहीं है इलेक्शन एनालाइज करना. यू टेल मी व्हाई द जीडीपी इज गोइंग अप और व्हाट इज पुशिंग इट डाउन और व्हाट इज हैम्परिंग द डिमांड और व्हाट इज रियली इंप्रूविंग एट द सप्लाई. एंड दैट इज योर जॉब, बट दे डोंट वांट टू डू इट बिकॉज दैट्स द बोरिंग जॉब. So that is where you are also right that the media has created this hype, hysteria. People have also fallen for it. Everyone makes it, every election a make or break election. Let's look at Delhi. Now, Delhi is an important election, but is it the national picture of India? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Does winning an election in Maharashtra solve BJP's problems in Uttar Pradesh? No, they are two very different states, very different dynamics. But for the media, the next day is like, अभी क्या होगा ना, अभी 4-6 हफ्तों में ना एक ऐसा आएगा मूड ऑफ द नेशन किसी भी रैंडम न्यूज चैनल का, राइट? दैट आज मोदी महाराष्ट्र के बाद वेयर डज ही स्टैंड? Doesn't make sense. And that is why in the past, a lot of exit pollsters have actually got the elections wrong. Because it appears now that the media is in a separate bubble. The party is now back towards the voters. They're trying to get their heads back on the ground out of the studios. And their voters are what they have always been doing, voting. Up Maharashtra ka result dekho, Kushal, how many people got it right? No one. Everyone said 140 to 180. Everyone was playing safe. I think there was just one pollster who got to that 200 mark. Just one, if I'm not wrong. But that was also his upper calculation. That was his upper limit. It wasn't his lower limit. BJP, NDA, the Mahayuti finishing at 230. Wildest imagination mein nahi tha kisi ke. Haryana, I'll tell you, 9:30 tak, it was Congress leading at more than 55 seats. Every exit pollster, they were feeling vindicated. Lok Sabha was an anomaly. We understand the pulse. We've been doing this for years. Suddenly, पौने 10 बजे सारे ऐसे बैठे हैं. ये क्या हो गया? What do we say now? So, yes, you're absolutely right. The media has created a bubble around elections and it needs to be burst. Because the kind of country we are becoming now, we hate hysteria, we hate drama. We want serious discussions because serious discussions lead to something. I'm saying if you and I are doing this podcast, let's hypothetically assume, and we are doing it at a very simple subject, not national, not even state, say something related to कि भाई चंडीगढ़ सेक्टर 17 में कौन से लैंप पोस्ट लगने चाहिए. I'm saying that is the kind of discussions that need to happen in an internet economy, in a media internet economy. वो सब नहीं होता हमारे यहाँ, कुछ नहीं होता. हमने अपनी पूरी ऑनलाइन एग्जिस्टेंस, अपनी पूरी मीडिया एग्जिस्टेंस या पूरा मीडिया नैरेटिव इलेक्शंस के अराउंड घुमा दिया. मैं कह रहा हूं घुमाओ, पर फिर उसको 5 साल में एक बार करते हैं. लेट्स मेक इट काउंट. Let every election matter, but then let it matter once in 5 years so that for the remaining part, we are hardcore building an economy.
Yeah, but I still feel whatever the media does, I understand the media is crazy. The media only follows the clicks and sensationalism. And I understand वो hysteria होता है एक लोगों को सब. I get all of that. But that still doesn't make this policy decision right, is what I'm saying. It's still, I just think this is such a wastage of political capital by the government right now. Like, our country needs economic policies. Our country needs all of this. Like, is the Prime Minister and the current government telling me that they're incapable of doing that because we have too many elections happening right now? Like, I just don't understand. Like, then that says a lot about our polity also, then, right? That nobody can push policy because कोई policy से कोई state नाराज हो जाएगी तो वो नहीं करेंगे.
यही है कि अब ये देखो ना, केपेक्स का एक्सपेंडिचर स्टेट से नहीं उठा रहे हैं. स्टेट से अपने इलेक्शन मोड में चल रहे हैं. मॉडल कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट लग रहा है, ये लग रहा है. एक साल पहले कुछ, अब कहीं इलेक्शन, अब बिहार में कुछ और शुरू हो जाता है, फिर उसके कुछ टाइम बाद अभी क्या 2025 में 26 में देन वी अगेन हैव हाई प्रोफाइल इलेक्शंस, असम, तमिलनाडु, वेस्ट बंगाल. all of them coming up. By the time we get over at 26, Uttar Pradesh is staring at you. See, it's not about what the center is capable of or not. And when we say center, it will be mean any center. 10-15 साल बाद कोई भी सरकार हो. प्रॉब्लम में स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स भी तो अपना काम नहीं करते ना, वो भी तो इलेक्शन मोड में रहते हैं. एक मिसमैच है. अब यू लुक एट दिस, गुजरात हैज अ सॉलिड मेजॉरिटी, बट महाराष्ट्र में इलेक्शन होता है, वहां भी लोग सोचने लग जाते हैं. इन्वेस्टर्स तो ऐसे ही सोच रहे हैं ना. इन्वेस्टर्स तो हर अब इलेक्शन को नेशनल पिक्चर बनाने के मूड में बैठे हुए हैं. ये एक प्रॉब्लम है. एक जो लेजिटिमेट क्वेश्चन आता है इस चीज पे, वो कहते हैं कि लोकसभा में जो हुआ, जो 303 का 240 हुआ, उससे कोर्स करेक्शन की नीड बनी, which is how Haryana and Maharashtra were won handsomely. What happens if you're doing all of it together? Then your room for error decreases. That's a legitimate point. Then again I'm saying the same thing. It might look bad for the voters, for voters like you and me, but it's going to get more difficult for the parties, especially the national parties who have a lot more to lose. The state parties, they are Samajwadi. This policy will actually make them a permanent national player, because then they won't go into any alliance of seat sharing and all that nonsense with the Congress or any other party. They'll say, this is the kind of voter we have. We go for the Muslim Yadav vote in UP, to give one example. We know they are going to be with us in the state in these many seats, at the center in these many seats. Why should we squander it away to an alliance partner? Then state parties will become more selfish, and their politics will evolve. यहाँ कुशल प्रॉब्लम पता है किस पार्टी को होगी? कांग्रेस को. बिकॉज कांग्रेस का भी गुजारा चल रहा है. दे बोरो फ्रॉम द स्टेट सीट्स, state parties, they borrow seats from there. Now Bihar will come out, they'll again end up negotiating with the RJD far more than what they deserve. The RJD will act pricey after Haryana and Maharashtra and possibly Delhi. Samajwadi will act pricey in 27. But what happens when one nation, one election happens? The state parties are saying suddenly, hold on, we have a core voter. We are not going to squander away our political capital. This is the discussion you and I have had a year ago when the India Alliance thing was happening. And the same question we used to ask, why would any state party squander its political capital in the Lok Sabha on a party that is not even favorite to win against the BJP? That is the argument Congress will again break up. They'll say, oh, it's against the federal structure. This is against democracy, basic structure, blah, blah, blah. What they will not tell you is this makes them obsolete in the long run because of their politics. Imagine Rahul Gandhi saying, Adani is this, Adani is that in Maharashtra, and suddenly his NCP partner is telling him, "Bhai, tu kya kar raha hai? My cooperatives, people who make up for my vote bank in the sugar belt, they store at Adani silos. What the hell are you doing?" Say he goes to UP, he starts chanting there, "Jitni abadi utna hak, jati janganna," and suddenly Akhilesh is worried that why are you sort of polarizing within the OBC communities? What happens to Congress's brand of politics? What happens to BJP's brand of politics? We'll come to that. What happens to Congress's brand of politics? Again, what I understood after reading this entire document, this proposal, and some of the arguments that given, it's going to get far more complicated for the party. So yeah, on one end you are right that it sounds like a very, very radical policy idea. Anyone who has a very basic reading of the report will sit and wonder, why does the party want to risk so much for all the parties? But the state parties have a lot more to gain, and national parties have a lot more to lose in this arrangement. And even then, if the BJP is pushing for it, probably one party who thinks about governance, that's the only conclusion I can draw for it. Because Congress, to this pure arrangement, it will just wither away.
I think this says it all. I am okay with one nation, one election, as it will result in less dry days. Thus spoke Beoda. भाई अमित रायना की प्रायोरिटीज एकदम क्लियर है. He's like, देखो भाई, हर टाइम तुम लोग इलेक्शन करते हो, ड्राई डे पैदा करते हो, मेरे को दारू मारने को नहीं मिलती है, मेरे को दारू पीनी है.
He must be very fond of his liquor कि 5 साल में 2 ड्राई डे उसको इतना परेशान कर रहे हैं.
बंदा एकदम डेडिकेटेड है. And see, one more point, like, okay, why only if one nation, one election, right? The report right now suggests that only the center and state elections should be held together.
Hmm.
Then why not municipal elections?
No, no, they're saying that the
I know they
local
say
bodies.
eventually we'll do it, but then
No,
yeah, it
no,
will make campaigning a nightmare. Like what municipal elections ke
no.
issues?
I for a start disagree there. I think it will make campaigning better. I
How?
think then there. पता है क्या होगा अभी कुशल? You've analyzed Congress policy. We both have. Go back to our podcast on Congress manifesto. Now, half of the things they've written in that manifesto, उनमें से एक चीज ये स्टेट लेवल पे इंप्लीमेंट नहीं कर सकते. ये कर्नाटका के इलेक्शन में डालेंगे डाइवर्सिटी एजेंडा, ये डालेंगे रिलीजियस रिजर्वेशन. You look at again, I'm saying this will make politics better in the sense now you have proper accountability. Hey, your prime ministerial candidate is saying this thing. You, as the same candidate of the same party, are saying this. Bro, these two things don't add up. You're contradicting each other. I'm saying parties will have to evolve. I think this can work.
I mean, eventually anything can work, I think, but I think it will have a devastating effect on local issues. I think it will have a devastating effect on in terms of holding local parties and local councillors accountable. I think the second order effects of it are far more visible, in my opinions. I can see many problems with this. And eventually, my biggest fear is that the police reforms, which are the one pressure wall on states, will never happen in this country, because again the central government came up with a ninja technique of delaying the inevitable, because koi accountable rakhega nahi inko, and the cops will never be there. I just don't understand why the government of India right now is wasting its capital on something like this, when it should be the economy and nothing else and nothing else and
But
nothing else.
Kushal, this has economic implications also in the long run. I mean, you look at China, just to give a very simple example. I'll see if I can pull up that image. It's from an article I wrote on Swarajya, I think 5-6 years ago, of the Chinese HSR. Okay. They were able to build the entire high speed railway network in their country in 10 years. Why? They don't have a model of conduct problem. They don't have land acquisition problems. They don't have a lot of problems. But then they are focused on business for the remaining part of the whatever governance tenure they have. We don't have that. You tell me, you find me that 1 year window when the center has to do nothing but focus only on governance. Now, it's a fair argument to say that why can't they do both? But somehow polity supersedes policy, and this is the reality. You give me, मेरे को एक 18 महीने का विंडो दे दो आप कि बताओ हाँ इस 18 महीने किसी इलेक्शन के बारे में नहीं सोचना, बस जम के गवर्नेंस करो. That 18 months across the country, you can build as much infrastructure you want. You can move at the speed of light. No one will stop you. There is no such 18-month window in a Lok Sabha which runs for 60 months.
Yeah, but then again, that is like, it should not be the case ना, वो होना ही नहीं चाहिए.
नहीं होना चाहिए, बट होता है ना. अब एक बात बताओ, पंजाब के किसानों को अगर एक पॉलिसी से प्रॉब्लम था, उसका उत्तर प्रदेश में इंपैक्ट क्यों हो रहा था? नहीं होना चाहिए था, पर हुआ. हुआ ना भाई. पंजाब के किसानों को अगर एक पॉलिसी पसंद नहीं है, वो हरियाणा में सरदर्द क्यों बन गई? उसको दिल्ली में एक सरदर्द क्यों बनाया जा रहा है? You and I, we are on the same page that this should not be an impact, that it should not have any impact on how the government conducts itself in policy making. But the real world is far more brutal and unforgiving towards the government, especially the one in the center. And for whatever reasons, BJP is a party which has a pan India presence now. There are people who wanted to sort of weaponize infrastructure development in the Himalayan states before 2022. कि देखो भाजपा पहाड़ तोड़ के ये बना रही है, सड़कें बना रही है, देखो ये खराब कर दी कॉलेज, ये आपके पहाड़, आपका घर, ये वो आपका खराब कर देंगे. भैया होता है इस देश में. There are people who sit on television, people like the one I scolded this morning on Twitter, who say, oh, Modi's trailing in Haryana. the national picture is against him, he must resign. पागल लोग हैं यार, क्या करें अभी? But on the ground, these things matter. Voter also is now not looking at a state-specific issue. मुझे एक बात बताओ, how many voters are looking at state-specific issues? चलो हम पार्टी की तो बहुत बात कर ली. कितने वोटर्स है जो आज बैठ के 10 इशू गिना सकते हैं कि हमारे स्टेट में ये प्रॉब्लम है, this is how the government of the state should fix it. People don't even talk about police reforms. You are one of the few crazy people who talks about it. You are one of the few crazy people who talks about state capacity by the state government, not just the center. There are very few people who talk about capex from a state government's perspective. मुझे एक बात बताओ, पंजाब में capex के नाम पे कुछ नहीं होता. कितने लोग पंजाब के बात करते हैं? सब MSP कर रहे हैं, ठीक है? केपेक्स पे कौन बात करता है? जो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का एक्चुअल में काम है, एजुकेशन, हेल्थ केयर, कितने लोग बात करते हैं? टुडे व्हाट यू सी ऑफ आयुष्मान भारत आल्सो इन प्रैक्टिस is because the center pushed for that. It's easy to say that, oh, state issues get overlapped. Correct. I'm not disagreeing. But then in the last 10 years, how have states acted? You look at Bengal. Bengal and Delhi today are infamous for not implementing a welfare scheme in their ego tussle with the center. कि आयुष्मान भारत हम नहीं इंप्लीमेंट करेंगे. उत्तर प्रदेश, बिहार में जो हेल्थ केयर पहुंचा है या घर पहुंचे या जो भी वेलफेयर का सब पहुंचा है, वो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट से तो पहुंचाया ही नहीं. सारा इनिशिएशन तो सेंटर का था. जो एक मेजर पुश आया सेंटर से आया.
हाँ, वो पानी की स्कीम भी जो है
सब कुछ, it was
वो सेंटर
envisioned
की है.
entirely by the center. Fine, there are budgetary allocations, there are some revenue sharing models, all of that is fine. But where's the major push coming from? So when we say that, oh, look, the state issues are getting lost or they're not localized enough, please also remember the center has to also localize its entire governance a lot now, because the states have not been doing their part. Look at infrastructure. How much the state, the center has done in terms of highways and expressways connectivity. Now, you can say Himalayan states were possible nahi tha because of the capex and the revenue restrictions. But if the center can take an active role in local issues which have a direct bearing on the state economy, at some point, voters' mind on national issues and local issues, there will be an overlap. And that is where this entire thing becomes very subjective. If a voter tomorrow feels that, look, party A is in the center, and I want party A in the state also because together they both will work well, I want that. But if they feel, no, party A in my state doesn't do well, I'll stick to party B, I'm sure that party B will deliver, then voters are giving a mandate to party B to work with party A in the center. Then the voter is telling, don't you dare do like a Kejriwal, what he did in Delhi, that you pick up a feud with Narendra Modi in the center. I'm electing you in the state. I'm voting for that man in the center. You bloody work with him. You work with my prime minister because you are my chief minister. Then that is the message the voters are sending out. Are the state level parties willing to take it? Parties like BJD were. Parties like TMC don't. Parties like DMK partially do. But parties like the Shiv Sena Uddhav Thackeray faction were not.
I think the most doable thing eventually through parliamentary debate might be one nation, two elections. I think something like the Americans have. Half term होता है ना, 2 साल में वो लोग mid term करते हैं. I think that is the one way the Americans manage this. I think that's a very rational way of doing it for India also in such a vast and diverse society. I just feel pushing everything under one rubric is kind of unfair on the voter. I think the voters should have a right to take their anger out. I think they have the right. Like they should have that option to take their anger out. I'll give you an example. They took their anger out in the Lok Sabha election in a few states. They got so shit scared they did a complete 180 in the state elections. Try and understand the repercussions also. Sometimes they may not, and they might make a mistake by going one way or the other. And I think voters deserve the chance for self-correction. What one nation, one election does is it actually robs the voter of the chance of self-correction. It's not the political outfits that deserve the idea of self-correction. It is the voters that deserve the idea of self-correction in a democracy. Or what we can do is, this is something that I've been thinking about a long time, okay? My biggest grouse with India is that we do not have elected mayors. India is a fast urbanizing society. As per many surveys, Chinmay Tumbe, Vivek Dahije et al., and many others, I think the urban data of India ranges between 45% to 60%. In the next 20 years, I see India becoming more and more urban. I feel we need to have more cities, more elected mayors, and then maybe you can just basically create a system where you have elected mayors, more cities, and then might as well do away with the chief minister concept and just add many more members of parliament. पार्लियामेंट्री इलेक्शन करो, देश चलाओ और सिटीज को लोकली चलाने दो. अभी टोरंटो के मेयर के पास कितनी पावर है यार. शी डिसाइड्स द फेट
Yeah.
ऑफ द सिटी. कोई प्रीमियर नहीं कर
That's
सकता और प्राइम मिनिस्टर नहीं कर सकता.
एक लॉ पता है ले आओ, and we are both being academic here, academically
Obviously,
foolish
this is an
perhaps.
academic
Nah,
discussion here. That's
uh,
how we are supposed to do.
any city, any metro with an economy with a GDP of more than 500 billion, just convert it into a UT. And it'll be politically incorrect to say this, obviously, but ideally, any city with a economy of $500 billion or more, just make it a UT because it deserves a very specific model of governance along with the center's push. So yeah, that can be done. But to answer your question, one nation, two elections, course correction, yes. But do you think in that case we can probably revise the term of the Lok Sabha to 6 years instead of five? So you have one election every
100%.
three,
This is something I would support. A 6-year
uh,
Lok Sabha and a one
and
nation,
three
two
year,
elections. Every 3 years, may
3 years.
half states, and then the next 3 years, may half states. That's a much better way of doing it, is my way, my understanding.
Hmm.
Or if you don't want to do it, just slowly but surely add more and more. See, we made a new parliamentary building. Just convert a lot of these MLAs into MPs over a period of time, break down their distribution, create more members of parliament, have elected mayors. You will automatically have a much more robust society where, and those elections are different. City elections, like mayoral elections and everything, will be completely different, council level. And then we'll have one parliamentary election for the whole country. The fate of the state and the country will be decided there. Why bother? Why, like, I think there are much better models than what the current government is trying to see, in my opinion. But the government will do what the government will do. That is
It's
their problem.
from a policy idea, it's very radical. It's very brave. That's, and I'm thinking from the behalf of the party here, any party, कि भाई, why do you want to risk so much? Why do you want to stake all your eggs in one basket? Because it's very ballsy, for the lack of a better word. कि हम
Yeah.
5 साल में एक बार ही मतलब कर देंगे सब कुछ. This is like me saying that I'll study for my class 10 both exams a week before they start. It's equivalent to that. But some parties do believe they can pull this off. Some state parties, I think, will come along thinking that they can pull this off. Parties like DMK. Now, see, everyone is saying that BJP will benefit because they are in the center and they are a dominant player in a few states. No one is saying that DMK को तो फायदा होगा ना यार. वो भी तो 39 MPs हर बार अपने जिता देगा. As of now, as of how things stand today, that in Tamil Nadu, then DMK will always sweep the state and they'll always sweep the Lok Sabha. So DMK doing it is fair to you, but BJP doing it in one state suddenly becomes the tiff between local and national issues. So there will always be those parties that will have that advantage because of how they are, and then there will be parties like the Congress which will be rejected in both center and the state.
Yeah.
But this
And
is the bigger headache for the parties again.
And I believe you don't need to convert it into union territories. You just need an elected mayor. I think let the cities be part of the larger state fabric, but you just have to convert it into see, India's problem is we don't have an elected mayor system. That's a
Hmm.
gross misrepresentation. Boss, Mumbai deserves an elected mayor. Delhi deserves, well, Delhi has a chief minister, whatever, like a mayor. Like what Delhi has, Mumbai deserves that. Mumbai ka nahi hai yaar. Chennai deserves it. Bengaluru deserves it. Pune deserves it. Nagpur deserves it. Nashik deserves it. There's so many cities that deserve an elected mayor. अरे problem क्या है यार? वो mayor को powerful करो ना. Mayor को decision लेने दो. Mayor अपना करेगा. Look at how Toronto की mayor Olivia Chow fights with Doug Ford and even Justin Trudeau for that matter. वो लड़ती है जाके. And see, and municipal councillors, what I've noted in Canada, they don't have party affiliation. Huh? Destroy the party affiliation at the independent level. It's all pure individualism. They are all individuals. They are fighting for themselves, fending for themselves. It will be a beautiful system. Have the party system at the top layer, and नीचे municipal layer में everybody is an individual. यार मेरी कोई party affiliation ही नहीं है.
But India में I don't think वो system हो पाएगा. The country you are talking about is very, very different. The country we are in is very, very different. That's why see, there are two scenarios. One, the government goes ahead with this very brave and ballsy idea. You have a one nation, one election, and the debates in the parliament around this will be fascinating. I just want to see what kind of arguments are put forward, because again, all this is so unimaginable. It was also unthinkable 2 years ago, even though we have seen this in 1952, 1957, and I think even in 1961, 62. Correct? But it was also unthinkable now 2 years ago that agar aisa ho to kya hoga? तो अब एक तो worst case scenario, जैसे you are saying that voters won't have a chance to self correct and course correction, and if a party has made a blunder once, it's forever. And probably 5 years is a long time for any party to be wiped out. Correct? But then there is the best case scenario. What if you actually get a stable model of governance? What if this obsession with coalitions, with fractured mandates actually goes away? Where people realize, okay, we want stability, we want economic prosperity, we want issues that actually make sense to a long term being. I'm being the optimist here. You are rightfully being the devil's advocate here. But the solution probably, and this will only come forward after the debates, lies
What if
somewhere
the
in between.
government falls midterm? भाई ने सीधा पॉइंट पे कर लिया. अरे भाई गवर्नमेंट गिर गई क्या करेगा?
हाँ, तो इन्होंने अपनी इस रिपोर्ट में बहुत कुछ डिफाइन करना है. टुक डाउन अ लॉट ऑफ नोट्स. So there are a lot of terms you need to understand. So there is a thing called full term, which will be, and let's take the example of 2029 to 2034. कि 29 में एक full one nation one election हो, फिर अगला 34 में. Just to give an example, okay? Now, a full term will be if the government lasts from 2029 to 2034, okay? A general election will be the one that is happening. Let's say, no, the first thing, simultaneous election. General election will come later. Simultaneous election होगा जो 29 में हो रहा है और जो 34 में होगा, कि भाई सारे स्टेट साथ, लोकसभा साथ, फिर 34 में सारे स्टेट्स एक साथ, लोकसभा एक साथ. This is simultaneous elections. Now, what happens if a government falls midterm? Now, the report suggests that we'll have a general election, or you can call it a midterm election, but that won't be for 5 years. That will be for the unexpired period. So, for instance, if in 2029 a government was formed in state ABC and it falls in 2032, then in that state ABC, a general election will be conducted for a government whose tenure will be until 2034. So 2032 to 2034 becomes the unexpired period, which will be decided, the government of which will be decided by a midterm election. And then in 2034, the state ABC goes to polls again, along with other state assemblies, along with the Lok Sabha, for the simultaneous election. That is how the framers of the report have envisioned this. So yes, if the government falls, which is a great possibility, there will be a midterm election for the unexpired period. अब ये सब constitutional amendments से सारा add होगा, that there will be 83 articles 83 and 172 deal with the duration of the Lok Sabha and the state legislature. So they are saying there will be an amendment which will be inserted to define what is an unexpired period, what is a midterm election. So all this will have to be done.
Chalo, now we'll take questions and wrap up. If the state government falls, I was reading the new government will fill in only for the remaining term and not for a new 5-year period. Will it not increase election cost again, which kills the basic argument?
Dhanush has had a breakfast of good questions today. But Dhanush, look at the map of India right now before you. Start with Jammu Kashmir, proper majority. You look at Himachal, majority. You look at Uttarakhand, strong majority. Haryana, Punjab. You go to Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi. You look at every state across India. Give me one which has an unstable coalition as of now, which risks falling before their 5-year term. Not even in the Northeast. Northeast does not have a great elaborate history of
In fact,
collapsing
Maharashtra
governments in
was
the
one of
recent
those
time.
uncertain states which is no longer uncertain.
Which one? Maharashtra. Yes.
Maharashtra.
Yes. So, yes, you are right that there will be a cost to the exchequer if there has to be a midterm election. But how often do we have that?
Hmm.
Maharashtra, yes, was an exception, rightly pointed out by Kushal. But you go back to 2014, how many instances you have really had? Madhya Pradesh, yes, in 2018-19 was that one exception, but it's got sorted in 2020. That won't require an election, right? What transpired in Madhya Pradesh between 2018 December and 2020 March, that won't require an election. So what you're asking is a fair question, but that would be a very, very rare occurrence.
Okay, another concerned citizen. Don't you think local development of small states will stall because in mini trains, hubs, and other announcements, no otherwise nobody will care. See, this is what small states will have that fear कि हमको बड़ी state खा जाएगी. Maharashtra will eat many other states का concerns. Maharashtra has 48 seats. UP has 80 seats, right? These big states, Bengal, Bihar, these big states with more Lok Sabha seats, when the elections happen, they will eat all the focus up, all the eyeballs, and they might get scared कि हमारी policies का क्या होगा. That's a very legitimate concern of a person most likely must be from a small state.
No, but how is it any different now? I come from the smallest UT in India. I come from Chandigarh. मतलब मैं तो पूरी 30 साल वहां काटे हैं जिंदगी के एंड यस इन द नेशनल इलेक्शंस द नैरेटिव वाजंट फोकस्ड ऑन चंडीगढ़ एवर बट दैट डिड नॉट स्टॉप द प्राइम मिनिस्टर फॉर कैंपेनिंग देयर twice in 2014 and 2019. He did not go there in 24. But I come from a small city, and let me tell you, you are right. Our smaller cities, UT states do get overshadowed, and this bigger states take a pie of the attention. But then those big states, in most cases, are also driving up the national economy. How they perform economically has a bearing on the development of our smaller states and cities. Our smaller states and cities also have to understand that the people we elect, or at least you elect, I don't even get to vote in Chandigarh, we don't have an assembly, they have to be more responsible in how they function. Now, you look at the state government in Bengal, for instance, look at what it has reduced the state to. It's a smaller state. It is not usually a part of the national narrative compared to, say, an Uttar Pradesh or a Bihar or Maharashtra. But what they have done, Assam, it makes it to the national narrative every time, even with 14 odd seats. Uttarakhand, Himachal do not, but they are equally important in terms of government's focus. So, don't go by what really happens with the narrative. Go by what really happens with implementation and execution. I'll give you an example of the northeastern states. Final point: the this tax devolution, the 16th Finance Commission, or the 15th Finance Commission, the one that is in practice right now. The way they created this new model, the smallest states are benefiting more. That is why you see these protests from the Karnataka chief minister and Kerala chief minister, that my tax, my right, all that nonsense. But then when we think collectively as a country, the policies are curated to ensure that development is inclusive for the smaller states and cities, like the one you probably come from. It's not anti small states or cities. Please remember that. The narrative, yes, it's always focused on the bigger states, but then the narrative is a temporary thing. Policy is a permanent thing.
Okay, next question. ये आंसर है ड्राई डे वाले भाई साहब के लिए भाई आप कितने राज्य घूमते हो जो हर ड्राई डे में फंस जाते हो आप चुनाव आयोग के वो कर्मचारी तो नहीं जिसे हर चुनाव वाले राज्य में चुनाव वाले दिन होना होता है वेरी वेरी वैलिड इंटरवेंशन
Long term thinking.
Yes. Why not election commission makes just the municipality elections online blockchain bails you will have maximum voting percent. I completely disagree with online voting. EVMs काफी है
Bhai,
online voting नहीं
bhai,
नहीं
people have people propagate theories against EVMs, and it's a nightmare to sit in a panel and listen to those theories.
बस कर दो
वो एक स्टैंड डिवाइस वन टाइम प्रोग्रामेबल like a maybe even more weaker than a calculator perhaps. People have created such conspiracy theories, satellite se connect ho gaya, ब्लूटूथ से कनेक्ट हो गया, अमित शाह जी एक कमरे में बैठ के बटन दबाते हैं। भैया इतना illiteracy है, and this illiteracy doesn't exist among the voters. No, it exists among certain sections of the media and the polity. So what you're saying is ambitious. In a parallel universe, it should be implemented, at least in India, not for the next 20 years.
What will be the impact on Hindutva from one nation, one election?
It will be
एक बार
strengthened.
कैंपेन करना पड़ेगा बस.
हाँ, और बाकी 4.5 साल मंदिर बनेंगे और क्या.
हाँ बस, और क्या होगा. Okay, what happens if the central governments fall before 5 years? Will all states go to election
No.
with the central one then?
No, 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 no. It will be the same thing. It will be an unexpired period, midterm election. They are going for synchronization. If you read the report, they're very clear about one thing, that we want synchronization. We understand governments will fall, but we want that even if they fall, it goes back to the same cycle from the next time on.
Okay, interesting. So we've taken all the questions. Is there any other comment that we skipped? I'm just trying to check.
कोई बैलेट पेपर तो नहीं मांग रहा?
Any ballot paper nahi. Why both of you are not against horse trading? I mean, who is not against horse trading? In fact, one of my biggest critiques in India has been that in India ये जो post Narasimha Rao government ये जो आया है, I think it is the most undemocratic system where members of parliament are not even allowed in India to vote their will. Therefore, they're effectively members of parliament actually do not vote their will in India. They
हाँ, they
vote their
toe the party
party's will.
line.
Yeah, it's India में democratic system है ही नहीं. Same Canada में है
But
बर्बादी का घर.
बट कुशल, एक बात बताओ, हम भी कितनी उतनी पॉलिसीज पे काम करे हैं वेयर एवरीवन शुड हैव अ विल? आप बताओ. नहीं करते ना. हमारे कितने रिफॉर्म्स हैं, मतलब यार कितने साल तो मुझे हो गई टीवी वगैरह पे देखते हुए, द वे सैटेलाइट हैज इवॉल्व्ड, हार्डली एनी बिल where a serious discussion has happened, where an MP says, no, this is where we want to take the contrarian line to the party, this is what we feel about the policy. Absolutely nothing. ऐसे बिल्स, ऐसे रिफॉर्म्स, ऐसे डिस्कशंस होते ही नहीं है. तभी going back to the first point I made, polity supersedes policy. That needs to change for an economy like ours, for a country like ours.
One last question before we go. If a government falls 6 months before election,
And then president's rule, na, I'm sure they'll
Yeah.
synchronize it.
yeah,
अरे 6 महीने की सरकार थोड़ी बनेगी, केजरीवाल थोड़ी समझा है सबको.
वो उनको केजरीवाल बहुत अच्छा लगता होगा. Anyways, before going, any other point that you think you have you want to make that you've skipped or missed out on?
So, a lot of things you'll read here कि against federalism, basic structure, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. Yes, as an idea, it's far too brave. It's very, very new for our set of voters. Probably the people who experience this, most of them are not with us today, 50s ke log. But it's brave. Is this what our country needs? Yes. Is this what our country's voters are prepared for? I think yes, the voters are mature enough. Are the parties prepared for it? I don't know. I mean, definitely leaving one or two national parties, no other party is prepared for it, because they'll really have to evolve their brand of politics. And that is where I'm really looking forward to the debates in the parliament, as and when they happen. They'll be fascinating.
Great. All right. So we'll wrap it up over here. Listen, once again, I'm going to share the entire document. This is the report. The link to this report is there in the description of the podcast. If you click that link, you can go and download the PDF file or read it on your web browser, whichever way you want to do it. It's a large report. It is 300 plus pages of a PDF file. I would highly recommend all of you to go and read it. Listen, if you are living in an informed democracy, that is what you're supposed to be doing. I read it. Tushar read it. I hope many more of you read it. I still remain a very deep skeptic of this policy. I think one nation, two elections sounds still more palatable to me than one nation, one election. I think it's more doable. more understandable. I think local issues do matter, and local people should get that self correcting methodology to show their anger to the central government, and vice versa. The central government should also get the opportunity for people should also get the opportunity for self correcting when they show their anger to the central government. It should be both ways. And I think one nation, one election kind of robs people of that. I think one nation, two elections will still give people an opportunity. Yes, something that Tushar has suggested of a 6 year term, I think that's a brilliant suggestion. I believe 6 year term is a very interesting suggestion. Now, I have put in a suggestion that we just empower mayors, and maybe over a period of time we reduce the idea, we just get rid of the idea of a chief minister and just increase the number of members of parliament, like have 1,000, 1,200 members of parliament across the country and just have elected mayors and empower. Because listen, the economy is run by the city now. We are a more and more urban economy, and right from the Indus Valley civilization till now, it's the story of human civilization in the last 6,000 odd years has been urbanization. Urban centers are the power centers, and I think urban centers should have a disproportionately more larger say in the destiny of a state. Because I know how much Mumbai suffers many times. I think Mumbai should have more control over its finances. It doesn't. And it's unfair on Mumbai. Mumbai should have had a metro long before. Mumbai should have had a sea link long before. Mumbai should have had many more things. I am very passionate about my city. I am very passionate about the issues of my city. And I hope all of you also become very passionate about the city based issues, state based issues. Yeah, like I said, police reforms is one thing that might be there. But through this podcast, what Tushar and I have tried to do is we've tried to had an honest discussion about it. Now, whether you agree with us, whether we you disagree with us, is immaterial. What we are trying to do is, the mainstream media never has this kind of a discussion. I'm stating this.
Yeah.
Tushar goes on mainstream. एक इंसान ने वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन पे डीप डाइव नहीं की है. कोई आदमी पढ़ के नहीं आएगा, कोई नहीं करेगा, which is the sad part. And Tushar has a very valid critique there. But Tushar, buddy, as always, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and we will go on doing this because the mainstream doesn't.
No, and one request, once the arguments from the political parties are out, right now we have a perspective not from a political party, but from a committee. The report is from a committee. Once we have the perspective from the political parties, and a lot of them, I think at that time we should probably do a second part of this just to discuss what's the interpretation of the political parties. That would also be very interesting as to how they view it.
Yeah, which is why it is important uh, for them to let these things get hashed out in the parliament. Once again, if you want to follow Tushar, go on X and follow him. The Twitter handle is here. He's also the editor of the Atom channel. So if you go on YouTube, type Atom channel, you can subscribe to the Atom channel. And if you want the Cārvāka podcast to remain the way it is, and why you come and tune in over here is because we try to do what most people don't do. We try to have serious discussions on the Cārvāka podcast. That's always been. If you keep on supporting me in the membership program, that's the only way I can sustain this model. Till now, some of you have supported it. But if you want me to discuss more and more policy, go deep and deep into policy issues, if you can, do consider joining the membership program of the Cārvāka podcast, whether it's on Patreon, whether it's on YouTube. What we need in this country is a more policy based discussion. What we get in this country is Modi ko ye kar diya, Rahul Gandhi ko wo kar diya. If we want to change, we have to change ourselves. So I hope you guys realize the value of joining a membership. And when the subscriber model is made healthy and stable, that's when these kinds of things happen. So do consider joining the membership. If you want to send one-time donations, you can send it both in India through UPI to kushalmehra at ICICI, in Canada through Interact at kushalmehra81@gmail.com. If you want to buy the Cārvāka podcast merchandise, you can go on kushalmehra.com or on Kadak Merch. If you can't do anything, just leave a rating if you're an audio listener on your preferred audio platform. That also helps the podcast a big way. If you are on YouTube, please like this video, subscribe to the Cārvāka podcast YouTube channel, leave a comment. Let us know what do you think about the one nation, one election idea in the comment section. And I urge you once again, I have left the link to the report. Please read it if you can. Let us change the way we discuss politics in this country. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, namaste, take care, bye bye.